Today, we are talking about payments and invoicing, the much anticipated new features that we just launched on Monday. We're super excited about. Today, we're going to be going over how to apply for your merchant account. We're also going to be going over how to set up invoicing templates so that invoicing is super fast and you're able to generate invoices in seconds rather than having to take a bunch of time. We're going to go over how the budgets work. We're going to go over how we've changed our business reports to better keep track of cash flow and everything else now that payments are flowing through ProLine. And then we'll go over miscellaneous stuff and we'll do some Q&A as well. But feel free to stop me at any point if you have a question about what we're getting into. We'll try to stay relatively on track. So if you have a question, you can wait till the end. But if it's relevant to what we're doing right at the moment, then feel free to jump in. All right. So the new payments functionality is mostly centered around the new billing tab in the projects area. So when we open a project, go to project details, go to billing, and we now have this invoices area. And then we also have payments. So we have payments that we can click over to, but we have this invoicing area. And this invoicing area is very intimately plugged into our quoting. And so you can just create an invoice from scratch if you want to, but it's going to work best if you are using our quoting so that you have all this information about what the price that you've quoted to the customer and what they've signed is already there. And then when you go to create an invoice, you can, and we're going to jump into this, how these templates are different, but you can have a template that is actually just for the deposit on your quote or the balance in its entirety. So we'll just make a balance invoice here. And so you can see here in just a couple seconds, ProLine has generated these line items for the different items that were selected on the quote. We can see here the amounts. We can change these amounts if we need to. We need to bill something different than what was signed for, but it will cause ProLine to let us know that it's no longer in sync with what was on the quote. And so we can sync that back up. We do have that control. We can also add line items if we need to. And so we could add a line item. And then even if you need to deduct money from what you're billing, maybe there was like a damaged flower pot or something, it's probably easier to do it as a line than actually change any of these items. So you could do like negative $100 for flower pot. And so that's how that works. And then that now has decreased the amount that is due. Now on this specific quote, again, we're going to look at this on the template side. This is the entire invoice amount is due, but it is possible to send an invoice where you have an amount that is large, but then you don't actually set all of it as due. And that's how it works with the deposit. So if we do the deposit invoice, then it's actually the same as if we do the balance, but instead of the entire amount of the invoice being due, it's only this amount, which matches up with what was signed for on the quote. So that if we go to the quote, I think everything's running a little slow with, there it is. A little slow when I'm streaming to Facebook and recording and all this stuff at the same time. All right, so if we go down here and we look at what was signed, we have this deposit amount here. So that's what's matching up on that invoice for the deposit. Now, when payments are made on an invoice, they'll show up here and they will count against that balance due. And so we actually do allow multiple different payments per invoice. So when you actually go to this page, and this is the same invoice that your customer will receive when you send it, or when you send the invoice, they do have the ability to split up that payment across multiple payment methods and multiple amounts. So if they want to pay part of it, they can. And so that's why we have this payments area separate, because we're keeping track of all payments in the entirety as opposed to just whether or not an invoice is individual.
I have a quick question for you.
Yeah, Romero.
So sometimes we'll have a customer that will have a small job and they just, hey, can I just pay, $100 a month or whatnot? Is there, is there a place where you can do this like automatically? We don't have to be worrying about it, just does it automatically? or not?
Yeah. So like payment plans, subscriptions, stuff like that. That is something that we'd love to add down the road, but we don't have right now. So, but it absolutely is a great thought that we have considered. And so eventually we will have like subscriptions. We want to set this up where you can set up recurring invoices for it'll have to be a whole thing called subscriptions. And that will be kind of separate from invoices. So, I mean, because there's also some people do service plans, especially on the commercial side. You have service plans that are recurring every month. So we will have a system for that we're going to build later. But this, as it stands right now, is just for one-time payments.
Does this all sync up with QuickBooks as well, or no?
That is a really good question. So at the moment, we have it where it can sync to QuickBooks through Zapier. So we have all this data flowing to Zapier, and we can kind of hit that at the end and look at that. And so it can be synced to QuickBooks in that way, but it is something that's going to, you're going to have to double check it. We are going to have a direct QuickBooks integration. We were going to actually work on the QuickBooks integration like back in November, but we decided first we needed to do this invoicing before we did that because we didn't want to build the QuickBooks integration and then have to completely rebuild it again. So now that we do have this invoicing in place and the payments, now we will be looking at finishing that QuickBooks integration directly. So I don't have an exact timeline on when that's going to get done, but it is coming down the pipe now that we have sort of the foundational data in place. All right. So lastly, this budget tab has changed. And so previously you could put any number into this gross revenue and you could just type it in. You do still have control over this gross revenue, but this gross revenue is now a sum of your payments. And so you're going to have all your card and ACH payments in here, but then you can also add cash or check. These are physical cash and check payments, financing, insurance, other. And then account credit is a little bit of a weird one. If you put an account credit in, it actually doesn't count towards revenue. This is like if you're telling someone, hey, we're doing a $500, I'll put $500 on your account. There's multiple reasons why you might want to do that. And so that's what that is for, but that doesn't count towards gross revenue. Then we have a few additional sort of dynamic lines here in the cost area that are automatically added based on if there are merchant fees for card processing or ACH processing, if there are any chargebacks or refunds, all of that gets automatically shown right here at the top of the cost area. And so that's how this works. I want to get in more to set up and setting up your merchant account. And then we can circle back if you guys have more questions specifically about invoicing itself. I did film a demo that's a little bit more in depth on just how invoicing works. And so that does also go a little bit more in there that's maybe worth watching. All right, so as far as getting things set up, the first thing you're going to want to do is go over to your company settings, go to billing, and then you're going to jump down here to merchant account. Now, this account has already been approved, but yours is going to say not started here, and there's going to be a button for apply for a merchant account. I think it says, or register or something to that effect. Click on that. It's going to pop up a window, and you're going to have to fill out some information about your business, EIN number, account numbers for deposits, all the different information that the payment processors need in order to accept you as a merchant. And so you fill out that information. Most approvals, as long as there's nothing that needs to get adjusted or more data that's required, most approvals happen within a couple hours. It can be longer. So one thing has happened is for one of our users that applied yesterday, we had to have them send a picture of a voided check so that the deposit account could be verified because it wasn't able to be dynamically or automatically verified. So there's stuff like that pops up that makes it take a little bit longer, but generally it just takes a couple hours for that to get reviewed and approved. Now, down below your merchant account area, you have your payment methods. This is where you're going to disable or enable different forms of payment. By default, all of these are going to be enabled. So you can accept credit debit cards, ACH e-check, and physical cash check. With physical cash check, it's just displaying instructions. And so you can edit these instructions and change what steps you want people to take if you are going to accept physical check and cash. And then I'll show you real quick what that looks like on the invoice side. So if we go to this invoice, we go pay cash or check, then you have your business address here, and then you have your instructions here. And then this will show your legal business name. This demo account doesn't have a legal business name, so that's why that's empty. But the legal business name is right here. So we'll put our Roofing LLC, show up. So now underneath payment methods, we have card fee handling. So we actually we're the settings for card processing fees and the settings for ACH and e-check are separate, completely independent from each other. And so for the card processing fees, which are the much larger fees, the ACH, e-check fees are much smaller. For the card processing fees, you have the choice. Do you want to pass those card fees to your customer so it shows up as a card fee when they're checking out, which is the way this account is set up right now. And I'll show you what that looks like. So if we go here and go to pay now, you can see that a card fee is shown here and it shows the amount of the card fee. And so if someone wants to use their credit card, that's what the fee is going to be. Now you optionally, rather than displaying it that way as an added cost to the customer, you can not pass along fees. And if you have that set, then when you go to the invoice, it's going to just show that amount that is due. So in this case, you as the company will pay that fee rather than the customer paying extra to cover it. Now, in addition to that choice, whether or not you want to pass it to your customer or not, we have another option down here, which is to build the card fee into the profit margin on quotes. Now, this really depends on a few different things. If you are in a market where you feel like you can get away with a slightly higher price, it will make it much easier on collections if you don't pass along the card fees, but you build them into your margin. This is going to it's going to make sure that your profit margin is protected. So whatever margin you put on quotes, you will get that margin. And ProLine is going to add the amount of the card fee, the maximum amount of what it could be will get added to, I have an example of this here. It will get added to the margin. So an additional 3.2% plus 25 cents will be added to offset card processing fees. So you're still technically passing it along to your customer. It's just in a slightly different way, and it's built into the total price. Now you can select that. If you don't have it selected, then you truly are eating the cost of the card fees if the customer chooses to pay with card. But by selecting this, you are still passing it along. Now, if you can still build the card fee into the margin and pass the fees along to customers, but you don't want to be double charging both on the quote and when they're going to check out with card. So to avoid double charging them for the card fee, ProLine automatically adds a cash discount to all quotes. So if we go back and look at that quote, now the way that it looks, and I'll generate this so you can see what it looks like on the actual quote, but we have an additional 3.2% plus 25 cents being added to the margin, but then it's also being subtracted as a discount, which is visible to the customer. And so if we go look at the this might already be correct. Let's see. Yes, this is correct. So this subtotal includes the cost of card processing, but there is a cash discount that is automatically being added. That way you're clearly communicating to your customer, hey, if you pay with cash, you're not going to have to pay this card fee. But if you do pay with cash, this is the extra fee. It's automatic. It is going to be taken off. So you're clearly communicating that to your customer on the quote, which allows you to give the most competitive price while still making that clear. And then when they go to check out on the invoice, if they choose credit or debit card, there's the card fee. That's the card fee that was deducted with the cash discount. It's added back. The discount is removed automatically if they go to check out with card. But then if they check out with ACH or e-check, it's not there. Or of course, if they're just giving you a physical check or cash. And so that is how we break down the card fees and you know how you want to handle those and pass those along to your customer or not. Now, ACH and e-check, we don't have the ability to build it in because that would conflict with building in the card fee. It's just whether or not you want to pass it along or not. We recommend not passing along the ACH fees because most customers are going to, most customers are going to be used to paying ACH and having it be free because that's how it usually is. ACH transactions are not free. Someone always does have to pay for it. But usually in a context of collecting payment from a customer, the company is going to cover that ACH fee. Now, you don't have to. If you do want to pass along those fees, still you can. But those fees are a lot smaller than the credit debit cards. And so those are, it's 0.5% up to a maximum of $50. So it will never be more than $50. And for most transactions, it'll be less than $50. So, yeah. And so that's how it works with the fee handling. And then lastly, here we have your deposits. So this is a list of the money that you can expect to receive in your bank account. And if you click on these, it actually has a breakdown of, and this one is the demo account is just very empty. Oh, it did pull something up there. So we'll have a more detailed breakdown where that money is being deposited. It should show your business bank account here, the date, ID, and so you have a lot of details here on when you can expect that money to come through. All right. So that is the merchant settings. Let's jump back up here into invoice templates. And so I want to show how these work. So let's start with deposit. So for the deposit invoice, we want the invoice name to be deposit. We can select a memo if we want to. For invoice calculation, we want to automatically convert all selected options and upgrades into line items. So if you are using ProLine quotes and you have a signed quote, ProLine is going to automatically build this invoice for you by converting any selected options or upgrades on signed quotes into line items on the invoice. This option, deduct all project payments, this has a major impact on how the invoice behaves. And so if this is selected, then any other payments for this project, even payments not to this invoice, will count towards this invoice. In most cases, you're going to want to leave this selected. And I'll talk in a second on why you might not want to have it selected for some invoices, but for the invoicing to work as kind of how we intended it, as in a really smooth way, and we'll kind of go over that again here in a second, you want to leave that selected. And then amounts due, you can select to have a specific percentage of the total amount of the invoice due, or you can select deposits. If you select deposits, then anything that has been the deposit amounts on all signed quotes for the project will be put in as the amount that is due on this invoice. And so that's what you want for a deposit template. Then down here, you can customize the text message and the email that gets sent when you're sending the invoice, including where you want the link placed in these communications. And then if you want ProLine to move the project to a specific stage when sending the invoice, you can select that here as well. And then for a paid invoice, you can select the stage when it is paid. Now, we do send emails when invoices are paid. We specifically invoice emails, and then we have notifications that can be controlled. I believe you can control signed or completed invoices. Look under account settings. We have invoice opened for notifications, but the handling of communication once for payments and for invoicing, because it is so sensitive and people have to get their receipts, we don't allow those to be customized just because of the risk of having those be sent incorrectly is high. So right now you can just control which project we move to, and then ProLine is handling what that communication looks like when payments are completed. All right. And then for balance, this is going to look exactly the same as the deposit one, except instead of it being deposits for the amount due, it is 100%. So whatever is remaining that hasn't been paid yet. And again, with this selected, if the deposit was paid, then the deposit amount is going to count towards this balance. So this, both the balance in the invoice are going to show the total amount for the job, which is a really good thing, because you don't want there to be any confusion about what someone owes you. So even when they're getting the deposit invoice, they're still seeing the full amount due, or full amount for the job. It's just that it's not fully due yet. But then when you send the balance, it's going to take that deposit and count it towards this balance invoice. And then we have this other template that, and these are the same templates that we've preloaded into everybody's accounts. But you can add additional templates if you want to. But we have this other invoice template, and this is a more classic, like simple invoice, like what you'd normally expect from an invoice functionality. And for this template, we have other not selected, or have deduct all project payments not selected. What that means is that when you send this, and then for amount due, we have 100%. And what that means is if you build an other invoice and you put $100 in it and you send it, that means regardless of any other payments for the project or anything else going on with the project, that person's going to get an invoice for $100, and they're going to be requested to pay $100. Whereas if you have this selected, it might show $100 on the invoice, but if there's other payments, it might already show that the invoice has been completed. So what all that looks like, if we go back to the billing tab, we go to invoices. So we'll just pretend this quote just got signed. So we just have this new signed quote, and we're scheduling the job, and we need the deposit to get paid before we can schedule that job. So we're going to come in here to invoice, just kind of clear out some of these that are not necessary. We're going to select deposit, create. It's going to pull in the total amount from that signed quote. So you can see the total amount here. Even though we're sending the deposit, it's still showing the total amount that's going to be due for this job. But then it's showing that the balance that is due, or the total that is due, is this amount that was the deposit from the quote. So this is what they signed for. When they signed the quote, it clearly told them this is the deposit that is due, and that's what's showing up on their deposit invoice. And you can see here, already paid. This is being deducted because this is selected. And so we do, and this would be unusual in a real life scenario, but because this is a demo, we have this $10 payment here under payments, and that is being deducted automatically. So the total balance due on this invoice is the $4,372, and then they can complete that. And so we have that, and then once the job is complete and you're ready to bill for the remainder, and let's do this. We'll say that they gave you the $4,372 in cash. So we'll go into payments, and we're just going to create a cash $4,372. We're going to select that invoice. Oh, we haven't sent it yet. So we're going to send this. We won't send the text and email. We'll just mark it as sent. That way we can put payments towards it. Cash, $4,372. Deposit, create. So we have a cash payment here. And then we can now see that this deposit has been paid. So we can see there's a $0 balance due, invoice balance has been paid. Now, when we go to bill the job at the very end, so the project has been completed, we're going to bill for the balance for this project. We create the balance, and we can see here that we have the total being pulled in here, and then I think there is. I think this is incorrect. I'm not sure why that says 4,000. I'll have to look into that on the back end. But the amount. Is there something else? 4,000 here. Yeah, there's something off about that. So I'll have to look into that and why that's happening. But this would our invoices due be paid. So it has the already paid, which is the 4,072. Not sure why this. Yeah, I think there's just a sync error. So I'll look into that. So we have the total amount due here is the 26,000. So same as what was shown on the deposit. And then we have the already due or the already paid, which is the amount that was paid for the deposit, and that is being deducted. And then there's the balance. And so that sort of continuity between the deposit invoice and the regular invoice, where there's never any confusion about what the total is for the job. That's very important. And so that is the way that we built these. Now, if you are using that other invoice template, or if you're just creating a template and you don't have this deduct all payments, project payments from the balance, that's where this already paid is going to be 0 unless there's payments that have been put directly towards this invoice. So if I put $100 in here, that's what's going to, the balance is going to be is $100. Now, if I deduct all project payments from the balance, we're going to see that it's going to take into account that 4,000 that's already been paid, and then it's going to be 0. But if I have that deselected, this is now just a standalone invoice that completely ignores any other payments and invoices for the project. All right. So I'm trying to think anything else to go over here before we just go into kind of general Q&A. We did change up how we do our business reports, and we're going to be making more improvements to these very soon as well. But the immediate changes that we needed to make was adding in a cash flow area. So we've really split up our business reports area to now marketing, which is focused on leads, sales, and then cash flow. And then we have this little info area in the corner where you can hover and see how, like, what each box is being calculated and what it represents. And then of course that cash flow is going to tell you the total amount collected, net revenue, which is going to be the same as total payments minus refunds, chargebacks, and merchant fees. And then also things like open quotes, sent quotes, accounts receivable, all of that is now trackable in here as well. All right. I think that covers everything that I was going to cover today. Do you guys have questions?
What's next on the timeline, AJ?
It's coming next. I have some smaller stuff to work on the remainder of December, kind of clean up stuff. I've had a lot of requests for CSV exports on the business reports. So I think one of the next steps will just be to add a button here to export the data, the raw data that we're using to calculate the business reports as CSV files so that people can pull it into Excel and do more advanced analysis on it. That's one thing that we're working on. QuickBooks is something that's high on the priority list. Now that we have payments in here, people need to be able to sync all that back to QuickBooks. So short run Zapier can be used to shoot that into QuickBooks, but long term we need a direct integration. And then still looking forward on simultaneous campaigns is still something that's coming up soon. To kind of alleviate some of those situations where you need to run 2 campaigns at the same time for the same project.
So I guess I have one other quick question, I guess. And I'm totally losing my train of thought here at this point. Crap. It'll come back to me. Just go to somebody else for now.
No worries.
Oh, I remember what it is. Price lists. are we gonna have a way that we can like take a price list from a supplier and like use that to actually build out these estimate proposals and templates and things, or not so much?
So we have the price list that's in the quoting tab inside our company settings. Is this what you're referring to, or are you asking about something else?
Yeah, but do we have a way that we can basically take our real-time pricing from a supplier, upload it directly there without needing to go through and like manually change each item one by one? Because like the big thing with that is like I don't use, like, the only thing I use from Certainteed is like their rolled roofing. I don't really mess with anything beyond that. Um, like
Well, you mean
I
oh, go ahead.
I like I'd like to just upload a price list that's actually specific to, you know, my business and like what my pricing actually is, and without needing to like manually go in and, you know, enter each of these line items and things, you know. But
So
I was just asking, is there a way that I can do that, or is it pretty much just manual at this point?
it is manual, and that's not something that
Okay.
we have any ability to control. So the problem is that the suppliers intentionally, like those pricing sheets they put out, are intentionally set up so that they cannot be parsed into a computer. And like they've actually actively built those to be like to not be able to do what you're asking, which is really frustrating for us. Because I'd love to be able to just have a place that you just upload and it just updates everything, right? And that would be possible if they put those out as like Excel documents, or if they had open APIs to stream that data. But they're very sensitive about their pricing, and so they've intentionally made those hard to share, hard to parse into a computer. The only other option is for us to have a direct integration with a supplier. And so, you know, some CRMs have that. The problem is you can only do that with a single supplier because all the suppliers are super competitive. So, you know, unless you use that same supplier that your CRM is integrated with, you won't have that sync. And then, of course, if you're using more than one supplier, because you know you buy some from this supplier and some stuff from the other supplier, then that's now again completely useless, and you still have to put a bunch of manual effort into it. So, it's a really frustrating problem that we have tried to solve, but unfortunately, there's just no way around manually keeping track of your pricing. Yeah.
Sounds great.
So I don't want to put this out. I don't want to say this is something that we are going to have because it's extremely unlikely that this will ever work. But I do have a buddy here in Atlanta that's has an AI company that they're working on parsing documents with AI. So they're turning PDF documents into like Excel sheets of data. And so I've talked with him and I've sent him some kind of sort of examples of pricing from different roofing suppliers. And the thing is, it's hard. We would need thousands of price sheets to possibly do it. And he was saying that it's still the way they have these set up is intentionally like going to trip up an AI. And then on top of that, it's an extremely costly endeavor to go down. And so, yeah, it's something that we just sort of tabled because it'd be such a huge undertaking to try to make that work. But it is something that's maybe possible down the road. Because it is a frustrating problem. So, all right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one, AJ. So with us, we do the deposit either the day materials are dropped or the day we start work. And so with that, to get that first payment before the work starts or the day of, when it's in a job scheduled campaign, are we going to want to just make one invoice with the total contract price in there and then bill them for 50% or 30% or whatever we want, and keep that first invoice, show that to carry over what they paid so far, and then send them the balance after? Because I obviously missed this first half, so sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
They've already
This is
told me.
all recorded, so you're going to be able to review
Okay.
that first half. But I'll go over it's good to go over that in more detail because I didn't cover it in too much detail. So for the specific situation you're talking about, in your templates, and this is the way it's probably already set up right now, I believe, but you're not going to want to have any send invoice stage selected. Just leave that as it is
Yeah,
because you don't want to conflict with that job scheduled campaign. You do have a job scheduled campaign, right?
right.
I would go into that job scheduled campaign potentially if you want to and just put in those sort of final messages leading up to the project, or you potentially might want to add another message and just say, hey, don't forget to pay your invoice. And let us know if we need to resend it or some language in there that might help with making sure those get paid. But I wouldn't start any new stage here. And then, of course, with the balance, you should be fine, though. When you send it, you should be able to have invoice sent here. And then you can add a campaign to invoice sent if you want to. We do have a template for collections that you can use. And so you can add a campaign there if you want to remind people to pay the invoice. Now, as far as actually like the process of sending the invoice, then the way that would work is you would go to new invoice deposit. And then, so first of all, do you guys already add the deposit into the quote? Like when they're signing the quote, are you guys, I can't remember if you guys are using our quotes or Sumo quote.
Yeah, we're using ProLine quotes now. And so the terms and conditions, the very last line is 50% deposit on total contract amount, because we don't know what that's going to be because of good, better, best, and all that. So whatever the total contract amount is, 50% of that is due first day or delivery of materials.
So we actually added fairly recently this deposit feature. So you can still have it in your terms and conditions, but you can also just say 50% as the deposit here. And then when they go to sign, let's generate a new quote here.
Yeah, that's what I do. I put that 50%.
Oh, you have it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I also have it in terms and conditions, so we can go back and like, here you go. There's the line where it says.
Perfect.
Question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's perfect. So you're already good there. So once it's signed, it has the deposit, and that deposit invoice template's already set up to pull in that specific amount due. So we can go in here. The way that we set this up, and John and I put a ton of thought into this because a problem that he's had that I've heard from other roofers as well is they send the deposit invoice for $4,000, $5,000, whatever. And I don't know if it's wishful thinking or just, not fully like thinking through it, but people pay the deposit thinking they're paying for the entire roof. And then when you send the full invoice later, they're like, hey, I thought I already paid for the roof. It's just confusion. It just slows down that whole collections process. So the way that we built this was when you send a deposit, it is showing the total amount due for the roof. It just has a part of it that's currently due. And that in deposit template is going to pull in the amount that was from the signed quote. So it's automatically accounting for, what options get selected, what upgrades get selected. And so it's going to pull in the total deposit that shows up. So it will show up on your quotes here. So it'll show up here under quote total. So it'll have deposit for you. It'll say 50%, and then it'll have that amount here for 50%. That's going to match up perfectly with what is shown on the deposit.
Okay.
And then just you would send this, and this would not trigger any stage movement. They would pay this, and then when you send that balance invoice, it's going to have the same total here, right? But it's going to have this already paid. So this amount for the deposit has already been paid. And so the balance due is going to be the total for the job minus the balance. And you can still modify this balance. If an example I gave earlier is like you broke a flower pot and you want to give them $100 off or something like that. You put flower pot -100 and boom, now you've accounted for that on your balance invoice. And that doesn't change anything about the deposit or the deposit invoice. That's totally fine. but you can still modify this, but if you don't modify it, it is going to perfectly match what was on the deposit plus, but instead of just the deposit amount being due, the full amount remaining would be due.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes. Another thing I thought of was change orders. So change orders are obviously unforeseen, but need to be handled like immediately. So I was thinking this other invoice template, we could use that as a change order invoice, like outside of the total contract amount. And it would be, this change order represents, redecking the entire roof or whatever that is. Then we can kind of like sidestep the total contract amount with that. But how do we kind of link it together so it's like kind of inclusive with everything too? Is that possible, or is that?
There's a few different ways to handle it. Time will tell on how companies will end up handling this. And so I'll, probably in 6 months, I'll be able to tell you this is the right way to do it. As of right now, yes, you could just use that other. So if you wanted to immediately charge for that change order amount, say between the deposit in the invoice. So you've sent the deposit, they pay the deposit, but there's a change order that needs to get paid prior to the completion of the job. Yes, you could send, there's a couple ways you could do it. You could bill for the balance, but then you could change the amount due. So instead of the entire invoice being due, you could add a line. We'll say we'll just call this change order. We'll put $1,000. And then, so this is just an extra unlinked line. It's not associated with anything on the quote. And then we don't need the full balance to be due. What we want is the already paid amount, which is $113.72, which is the deposit, plus $1,000. So we'll say $5,000. And so this would leave a balance due of $1,000. That's a little bit of work. You could do that, or if to keep things simpler, you could just do other. And then now this is an independent invoice that you can send. You just put $1,000. It's independent of the other payments that were made, for the deposit. So you could just do that. The main thing I think where this is going to get complicated is you do still, when you charge for the deposit, you need to make sure that $1,000 is still on there. So that's one way to handle it. Now, the other thing that you could do to make things a little bit more complete is you could actually create a template. I don't have one in this demo. Let's do one real quick. So we could have a template, a quote template. I think actually we do have this in our newer accounts. So the new ProLine accounts being created, I think, have a change order quote template. So we'll call this change order. And the only thing we're going to put in here is we're just going to put an option for change order. Of course, this could be customized a lot more. And maybe we want to put text in there to sort of give more of an explanation, but you could go in here, go to quotes, create a change order. So creating a change order quote. Now this quote doesn't have a signing page, so it doesn't need a signature. We can add a line item here for, I wonder, do we have an other? Yeah, so we could like other material. And we could say, we would put, you can customize this however you want, how much you want to charge per item. Just say it's $1,000. Times 1, or if you want to do $1 times 5,000, however you want to do it. So this is $1,000 change order. And this needs to be a change order. Now you can send this, you can send it for approval, or we just added as part of invoicing because we are anticipating that this might be what people want to do. You can just hit approve. So you have this change order, you can send it just like you would a normal quote. If you want to, you could also if you want to collect signatures on change orders, you can do that too. So you can send a signature page for sure. But we added, if there's no signature page, you can now just approve it. So internally, you can approve a quote without a signature. And so that's now an approved. So this one says signed, this one says approved because there's no signature for it. So you have an approved change order. Now, when you go to create that balance invoice, it's going to have that change order on it.
Okay.
So I wish I had like a clear cut, like this is how you do change orders. But I think there was like 3 different ways to do it there. I would just pick the one that makes the most sense for you. I think if you want to be the most squared away on it, the way to do it would be have a quote template for change order, maybe even with a signature, so you get the signature from them for the change order. And then so treat it like a secondary quote, and then the invoicing is going to basically handle it automatically if you do it that way, because it's going to automatically add that change order for that balance.
Okay.
So
Makes sense.
yeah. All right. Any other questions? Coming up on an hour.
That's it for now for me.
Elizabeth?
When an invoice is paid and we get that payment on that right side there, does that receipt get sent to them too automatically when they pay that? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Automatically. So we don't allow any customization of that right now. ProLine's handling that since it's pretty sensitive, but yeah, we send a PDF receipt. You can also access the PDF receipt here as well. So this is the PDF receipt that gets sent to the customer. And then there's also, if it is a card or ACH transaction, you get a lot of data here. This is some of this down here is just for like troubleshooting in case there's any issues. So we'll probably hide that down the road, but right now we want it visible. And then if you would need to do a refund, you can do that in here as well. There are notifications for in place for when invoices get paid. So you'll know that happens as well. And then it will also show. It will show in, so it'll show stuff in the activity feed as well. So, Ryan, were you the one that was asking me about the gross revenue?
Yeah, because before we could manually enter that. That's the total contract price that we signed. So we'd put that in there. And that's what ProLine was using to generate gross profit and margin below, because we manually enter materials, labor, whatever else.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the gross revenue is like almost post the job, but I was trying to use it as a way to track and like
potential revenue.
Yeah, track all that stuff. But if it
Yeah.
happens after we receive the payment, then it's like that's real world, but it's like just kind of visually the way some people manage stuff to see it after the fact is sometimes a little too late. I don't know.
You would like to be able to have like a pre versus a post budget? Is that kind of what you're asking for?
Yeah, and like when we do an order in ProLine, does what we've labeled a line item material and a line item labor, does that get separated down there in the budget? Because I think I've done a couple and it hasn't translated down there. It's only shown gross revenue.
Yeah. So this is still editable. And this is something that you would have to fill out at the end. We may have some automations in place where it's like once everything goes down, like based on whether you marked it labor or materials, it automatically fills that out. But as of right now, it doesn't. So it is automatically filling out this, and it's filling out. We have some extra costs that are being added for like merchant fees and stuff like that. So that's getting added automatically. But these you do have to fill out at the end. And the reason that we do it that way is because your material cost may not be what was on the quote, right? You might get a deal or something with the supplier, and so this might end up being different. Same thing with labor or commissions. Like this is at the end of the day, you're going to have to. This is the very much a post job budget. One of the things that would be really great that John and I have talked about would be to have just like under billing, we have this invoices and payments, basically having 2 or 3 tabs up here. So we have post job. This is really the post job budget. And then having a pre-job budget where it showed the quoted number. So like, and having those breakdowns at different points in the process would be a really good feature. Right now, this is very much a post job budget. Now, the number that you were looking at before, where you wanted to know sort of and you wanted to anticipate what your revenue might be from a project. We now are automatically generating that based on the quotes. So if you go into, and I think I already set this up in your account. I think I went in and changed it and updated it because I knew you were using it that way. So we'll say for 1, so this is still revenue or gross revenue, but if we can go in here and change it. So we can go to stages. 1 snippet. So we have actual revenue. That needs to be changed to gross revenue. That's what that is. Gross revenue. We have open quotes, signed quotes, and accounts receivable. So open quotes is what you were really using it before. Or sorry. No, if at this stage it would be approved quotes. So we go back to stages. So approved or signed quotes this is contract value. So this is the signed contract value for the specific project. Open quotes is going to be the minimum possible value of the open quotes on the project. So if you have a good, better, best option with some upgrades, it's just going to show the value of the good option, the lowest cost option with no upgrades. So that's what's going to show there. So that's, if you wanted to display that maybe in your sales follow-up, if you prefer that as opposed to the next automation step, you can do that. And this data, like we're calculating all this in the background, and so it can be displayed here. One of the things that is on our list is to display more of that data inside of each project. So to have an area and like a pre and a post job budget would be a great, like maybe a post job, pre-job, and like post sale, like a post sale or pre-job, post job. And having like a pre-sale budget where it shows open quotes and then a breakdown there, or something to that effect. So we want to show more of that data in here, but you are able to expose it underneath the snippet for right now.
Okay.
All righty.
One of the things I thought about last night was, so if we move left to right, we enter the measurements for the job, we build a quote, we sell the job, we build an order for the subcontractor, let's say it's gutters, and we send the order to the gutter crew. The job's over. I'd like to pay the gutter crew. So can we do outbound payments from here and directly link that order and just say, pay all line items, or you can adjust them if you underestimated 10 feet or something for gutters, and then send it outbound like that. Can we do that with Rainforest? I
would love to. I would love to. We actually can. So like Rainforest, as they do support that, and so we want to add that. That would be super cool. In fact, one of the things that John and I have talked about is we wouldn't have a W-2, but having all contractors get paid directly through ProLine. So you could have the sales reps get paid directly, automatically calculate commission, just pay them with a click of a button, pay your crews, all of that. That would be amazing. I would love to do that because there's fees that we can collect on that. So yeah, we would love to add that at some stage. Don't have it right now because that is a pretty big feature add. But another question Ramiro was asking earlier was about subscriptions. So that's another thing that we would love to add, is the ability to put, and not everyone does that, but he was specifically talking about in the format of a payment plan. So if someone can't pay the whole balance, like setting up a payment plan for a certain number of months or something like that, which is something we'd love to add, and or like service subscription, or like maintenance subscriptions, specifically in like for commercial, those are really big. And then of course, and then paying outbound payments, all that would be very, very cool. We'd love to put that all together. Just going to take some time.
Cool.
So thanks for the feedback and questions. Any other questions, Ramiro, John?
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you. But, well, one question I did have is, I haven't actually taken the class for how to use your quotes page, but, is that something that you can sign me up on?
Yeah, absolutely. Is Edward still in here? I'll make sure it gets sent to you. It's on our YouTube. So are you specifically looking, you want to see the video on how to set up the templates, or are you looking for more like a demo of how it works?
I'm with Sumoco right now, but, I'm not very happy with them, so I'm trying to see if I can just swap, Edward's trying to swap me over to ProLine, so. I
Yeah,
just need to know how to set up and move forward.
yeah, absolutely. So I'll make sure that gets over to you.
Okay.
And yeah, there's two videos. One's more of like how the quotes work, and then one's more of like how to set up the templates, like how to set up price lists and all that stuff. So I'll make sure both get sent to you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. I think we'll wrap things up.